Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, so this is the Wednesday, January 2021 meeting of the Peralta Community College District's Bond Measure Oversight Committee. Can we call the roll for a quorum, and then I'll make introductions.
Indeed. My pad here. Andrea Dawson.
Present.
Marcus Crawley.
Here.
Patricia Ellis.
Present.
Benjamin Scott.
Present.
Youssef Herbert is not here. And Ariana Brown. I don't see her in the list, but we have 4 out of the 6 members. So Madam Chair, you do have a quorum.
And we have a vacant seat. So, okay. So I am going to just introduce staff. We have Etheria Smith, who's the acting vice chancellor of the general services, which is the bond measure program included. Adil Ahmad, is that correct?
Is not present.
You're not present. Okay, Mark Johnson is the executive director of marketing, and you're acting as chair of the meeting this evening. We have
I'm your clerk.
and Etheria, I apologize. Etheria Smith. Is that correct? You're the what would you?
Well, Mark is going, you know what, I just want to thank Mark for all the help he's given, everything that he's done. I greatly appreciate it. And now that we're going to be, Mark is going to be transitioning out, and I will be stepping in with you, Andrea, to run the CBOC meeting. And Mark, again, just thank you for everything you've done, organizing the meeting and, you know, continuing. So with that said, let's continue for this evening. And Mark, you're welcome to join us in the future.
What point of information to the chair?
Yes.
Oh, just curious what is happening with the change?
Etheria, would you like to express why you're now acting vice chancellor?
Sure. I've been with the district for 15 years, and I was the director of capital projects as of November, it might have been November 1st, but Dr. Lisada resigned his position. And at that point, the chancellor had to appoint an acting person. The position is currently advertised at this time. So until someone fills the position, I'm serving as acting vice chancellor.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. So
I'm still with the district, by the way, Mr. Scott. It's just that Chancellor Walter had asked that the Bond Oversight Committee kind of be maintained with a relationship with the Department of General Services. So that's why it's kind of moving from me as the main point of contact to Vice Chancellor Smith.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Appreciate that.
yeah, and so also with us we have Andrea Stokes, which is he's Peralta Facilities Bond Coordinator, and Keith Kajai, who is AECOM Vice President, and he is manages the bond program for the district. Their company is a consultant. And I'm not sure who Erwin Tam is.
Oh, I work with Dave Olson, who's on this call as well. We are with Braxton McCarley Berry. We are the district's municipal advisors with respect to its bond program.
Yeah, I see Dave Olson and I don't know who you are, even though you're on Judy's laptop. So we'll move on to the meeting now, okay? So the first order of
John
business-
Palmer. You did
I am
not-
John Palmer.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm the district.
earlier, so I apologize. I'm sorry. You're the district's
No,
legal.
not at all. The less the lawyers talk, the better. I'm John Palmer. I'm with Orrick, Harrington, and Sutcliffe, and we are the district's bond counsel.
Correct. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to approve minutes of October 2020 meeting. Do I have any motions to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes, Benjamin?
I will second. Can we do a roll call on the minutes for approval?
You want me to do that, Etheria?
Oh, thank you.
Sure,
I'm trying to get control of my screen here.
no worries. Benjamin Scott,
Aye.
Patricia Ellis,
Aye.
Marcus Crawley,
Yes.
Andrea Dawson,
Yes.
and motion carries.
So the next item is approve agenda for the 2020 meeting, which, are there any interest in changing order or comments to the agenda?
No. Benjamin?
May I ask a clarifying question? Are
Yeah.
you saying that right now we're doing what again?
And typically what this is that you can ask for something to be moved up on the agenda or a clarification question. So do you have a clarification question on the agenda items?
I don't have any questions about the agenda items. They look okay, although I would suggest that in the future that approval of the agenda be at position number 2 rather than position number 3, because approving the previous minutes seems like an agenda item. So we ought to approve the agenda before we launch into approving doing something else.
Okay, we'll take that under consideration. All right. So the next item is a statement really that public comment on agenda items. There's going to be a 15-minute maximum on all agenda items. So I'm not sure if we have any public listening this evening, but if they tune in, we will allow them to comment on each item. Do we have any public that is signed on?
I think everybody on the call is either a member of the committee or an employee or a contractor for the district.
Okay, great. So we will move on to item 5. And I'd like to keep this to a strict 20 minutes. I actually have another meeting at 7 that I'm also the chair, and it's an emergency meeting. So this meeting has to end at a time certain. And if we want to take up other items as a subcommittee, we could do that after this meeting. So I want to express that right now. So with that, I'm going to introduce Keith Kajai from AECom and allow you to give us, or please present us with a bond program update.
Hey, wonderful. Let's see if I can get my technology to work here.
Do we have to share the screen? Do you have to control the screen?
I think I can share my screen here.
Great.
Yeah, we are in a regular Zoom meeting, not a webinar, and everybody should be able to share as needed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Am I sharing my, yeah, I'm sharing my screen. Can you see my deck here?
Yes, we can.
I'm kind of in this, I'm not in presentation mode because sometimes I have to zoom in maybe if you can't read a number or something. So let me know if everyone can see this okay. Or certainly advise me if you want me to zoom into any part of the presentation. So good evening, everyone. I'm Keith Kajia, your bond program manager for the capital program. It's a pleasure again to present before you. I think I've had the honor of presenting almost at every meeting over the past year for the committee. So today I'm just going to give you another typical bond update of where we are with the capital bond program. First, just an overall status of where we are, some bigger, broader picture numbers. The capital program overall is a consolidation of multiple funding sources from Measure A and Measure G, as you're all aware, in addition to state funding and some funding from the federal side from an EDA grant. Just as a snapshot of where we are as of today, there's $77 million of funding from the state in place. These are matching funds, so the importance of that is that we're leveraging the local bond funds with state matching bond funds. There's $61 million that we've committed to contracts for the bond program for the new projects moving forward. Of course, we've sold the $115 million in bonds, the last tranche of Measure A funding, the $65 million and the $50 million from Measure G back in May. And most importantly, there are 15 major capital projects underway, in addition to a number of infrastructure projects. Notably, the two that I've highlighted here for Laney College and Merritt College, those are actually in DSA, currently under DSA review, so those have progressed quite far. They're fully designed at this point now with the division of the state architect being reviewed. And those notably are state matched projects. Here again, highlight from, I think our last meeting, we highlighted the sale of the two tranches of bonds for Measure A and G. And currently projects underway, this is how we've allocated that $115 million to projects across each college and district-wide. What I've got at the bottom of the chart here is a little snapshot of how we've allocated that funding to each college. That's what this overall bar represents for College of Alameda, for example. 27 million has been budgeted out of that last group of funding, the 115 million of bonds that were sold. And this is a little thermometer that tells you how much we had spent as of the end of September on projects for each college campus and district-wide expenses. The budgeting process, it's rather fluid, right? As needs happen, the board would approve budget transfers. We work closely with district finance, with Andrea Stokes on any of those transfers. But this is a snapshot of where we were as of the end of September related to finances and expenditures.
May I ask what causes the lag between the date of reporting and in the presentation?
Yeah, I think only that we were looking at doing a kind of a quarterly update. And so we were trying to capture like the December quarter be too quick to try to reconcile the numbers for it. So we're off a quarter basically. We could probably run it from maybe from the month of March or so if we wanted to, right?
Yeah.
We're capturing those on a monthly basis.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure. And then this is we start to dive into each project more specifically, representing the spend on individual projects, each college campus. This is again that same number, but now you see it broken down by individual projects for each college and the split between what we budgeted for Measure G, what we budgeted for Measure A, and again, the expenditures for each project at each campus. So these should all be in your packets. If we look at overall project status for the major capital projects at the College of Alameda, the new Center for Liberal Arts, which was funded from Measure G, is complete. The construction is complete. We have a couple of closeout packages that we're moving forward with related to some of the audio-visual equipment and the artwork in the building, but the building physical construction is completed. We're actually in the process of filing a notice of completion with the county. It's actually going through its DSA final closeout process right now. These next two projects, the auto diesel technologies and the aviation complex phase 1, are moving forward. They're in design. The auto diesel technologies project is currently about 50% through construction documents, so it's in its last phase of design. Notably, that's a state-funded project. The Aviation Complex Phase 1 is the project where it's also in the construction document, that last phase of design as well. But it's also cross-funded from a grant from the EDA, Economic Development, from the federal side. Phase 2 for the Aviation Complex is another building on that same complex. That's right in the early stages of procurement for selection of an architect. We were fortunate that the state has actually advanced funding to the district for matching funding for that project. So we're moving forward with an architect solicitation for that. And we're in the very early stages of this new science and admin building right now, working with the new college president for the College of Alameda to start to scope and define what that project's ultimately going to be. But it is something that's been planned for in the bond spending plan. This is the same kind of snapshot for Berkeley College. Notably here, and maybe I was remiss in not going maybe through some of the line items here, but each campus you'll see has some discrete line items for major capital projects. And then there's typically an infrastructure and information technology bucket of money as well in each college campus. The infrastructure is intended to address upgrades to the basic infrastructure of the college campus, MEP systems, things that are going to support some of the future development on the campus, and information technology is a computer refresh number for each college campus. In the case of Berkeley, I'm sure you're familiar with the campus, but it's a building right now on Center Street. This is actually a new building right about half a block down the street on the corner of Milvey and Center Street. It's right in the process of design, build, procurement. So this is a design, build, delivered project. We're in the very final stages of our design build interviews right now. And once that design builder comes on board, then we'll start progressing through design. Again, we've gone to the board back in July with a resolution authorizing design build to move forward for 6 projects, and really with the advantage of being able to compress the timeline of delivery for these projects. And really the genesis of that was really to try to beat escalation as much as we can, right, to maximize the amount of money that we have to really put in bricks and mortar for each college campus. This is probably the most active project as the one with the largest FTS, the most number of students. It has the most number of projects that are active. You can see again the split of the projects there for your information, but really related to status of the projects. These are the major capital projects moving forward for Laney. This first project here, this mobile modular village, that's an interim housing project that's going to be placed on the tennis courts for the campus. It's to house temporarily the locker room facilities, which is that next project where we're renovating the locker room for the college, and also to kind of relocate some of the portables that are sitting on the site of this Learning Resource Center project. But here again, you can see a snapshot of where progress has been made. What I tried to do is kind of track from the last time I presented to the committee. The green little bar represents the progress that had been made from the last time we presented to you. So you can see that these projects are moving forward. They're all on track moving forward, especially the ones that are state funded. And finally, Merritt College, a similar breakout of that budget and the allocation between Measure A and G and project status for Merritt. This has notably 2 state funded projects, state matched funded projects moving forward. It's the Child Development Center and the Horticulture Building. The Child Development Center is actually in DSA. We're expecting that to come out of DSA shortly, so we'll be going into a pre-qualification process for contractors, and then excitingly, eventually bidding it and having that under construction this calendar year. And the Horticulture Building is actually in the process of its final design phase of going through construction documents. One of the other projects that's on the campus is a tenant improvement build out of some of the unfinished spaces from the Barbara Lee Science Center that's on the campus, and that's in the current scoping phase. District-wide, here's a breakout of some of those district-wide expenses. Some of these are either systemic things that are across multiple campuses. For example, this third line here for Blue Phone security phones. It's a phase 2 of those blue phones, security phones that you see on each campus across multiple campuses. Same with elevator upgrades or district-wide fire panel upgrades. These are things that we carry at the district-wide level. So that's what kind of this represents, as well as this program support services, which are some of the administrative oversight costs for the bond program. One of the things we've really been driving, of course, is local participation in the bond program to really encourage local businesses to be part of the capital program and participate. So through that process, we've working closely with district purchasing with Brian Slaughter, the director of purchasing in the district. He's implemented vendor registry, which is an electronic online tool for people to have access to bids and to submit bids electronically, critically important now in this COVID environment. Excitingly so, we've also implemented CUPCA, the California Uniform Construction Cost Accounting Act, which allows us to use an informal bidding process for our projects for contracts that are under $200,000. So we're really looking for local businesses to register for CUPCA. It allows us to quickly get some of those opportunities out to the local business community. We also have another program that's we would call Build Peralta Academy. That's a curriculum, frankly, of 9 courses that we've been doing over the past several months. We're in the very final stages of them. These are the ones, frankly, that we've been actually doing over the past few months since we last met. We've been having these evening courses for local businesses to participate and learn about these topics. We bring in a subject matter expert to talk through these issues with the local business partners that are looking to do business with the college district. Really, the point of the program there is to really kind of provide this kind of bid equity, basically, to elevate smaller businesses that maybe could benefit from having some additional knowledge about some of these types of topics. For example, how to obtain bonding and insurance, for example, right? And we provide them training on how to best do that. And at the end of the day, those that actually complete a majority of the classes, actually 8 of the 9 classes, they're actually afforded a bid preference related to some of our upcoming procurements. And there'll be actually a bonus pool of points when we actually do our scoring for a local business that's actually participated in the capital program and the Business Build Peralta program. With that, because I know we're on a timeline, Chair Dawson, that's the end of my presentations. Happy to take any questions from any of the committee members.
Okay, committee members, questions? Any questions?
Although I'm not a committee member, I have a question if you're willing to entertain it.
Of course, Mr. Palmer.
I recently saw in RFP that a city put out that was for parking meters, and the sort of city RFP was looking for how many, quarters can the parking meter accept before it has to get emptied. But I think that what they were looking for was maybe kind of a smart city solution. I'm curious whether you see any sort of issues in the procurement process that impede the district's ability to get cutting edge solutions to its facilities needs.
Issues in the procurement process.
Yeah, like so and this is like I'm not going anywhere with this question. This was just something I saw, and I don't know whether it's an issue more broadly. But in the situation that I saw, the RFP was sort of thinking about 20th century parking meters, and by doing so, it sort of didn't open itself to a 21st century solution.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just curious, because this was one instance, and I don't know whether this is a thing or not, whether you've seen anything like that, where the procurement process is sort of rooted in a vision of the world that's antiquated.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, honestly, when I first came on board, one of the first things that I had done was to look at the capital program and how to best deliver the projects, right? It's what represented the bond spending plan. And in July, I referred to this design build resolution that we took forward, right? Because the design build process allows us to not only compress the schedule, but really to take advantage of that design build entity to be creative and provide solutions to us, right? Rather than the traditional design bid build delivery method where this is what we want, we had someone design it, and then we're just giving it to you, please build it. We want this entity now to work collaboratively with the district to be our partner and provide us solutions, especially on some of these projects now that we're moving forward in a post, hopefully soon, COVID environment, where we've seen kind of the culture and the way education's delivered, right? Chair Dawson was talking about what her district's been doing, but in our case as well for Peralta, this online instruction that's been going on, it's causing us pause to look at, for example, this Milvia project I was referring to at Berkeley City College, and some of the spaces that are in the building, and actually tapping into this design build entity to provide solutions for the college to have a versatility and a diversity of space in that building. It's important to be able to tap into that versus where traditionally before, frankly, we would have probably designed that based on this is how we deliver instruction, and it would have been classrooms, right? Now we're looking at a much more creative solution on the fly, and we can adapt much quicker. So I guess from that sense, we are looking to leverage those opportunities to look at procurement processes to really provide flexibility and kind of innovation in what the district does. We're looking at a number of bench contracts as well for consultants moving forward, especially on the engineering side related to infrastructure. And it would kind of be in the same mode of not systemically looking at, rather than, hey, my boiler, my heater, my whatever it might be is not working, come and fix it. Look at the college holistically, right? And what are the best cutting edge solutions that might be in line with the district's sustainability plans and goals as well, and come up with solutions back to the district. So we don't just ask you to come and deliver this commodity, it's bring us your big ideas. And we're looking to leverage
That's great.
Procurement where we can.
Yeah.
And then value.
Thank you so much.
And then value engineer them. So you stay on it.
Well, that's my biggest goal, right? Is to always hold the budget, right? That's one of my key mantras, and certainly for this committee, it's important, right? And it's always a matter of prioritizing those needs and those wants against, frankly, how much money we really have. And that's really what the bond spending plan does. It really starts to do those carve outs so that we can make those decisions through the shared governance process with the college presidents, with the faculty, right, with AVC Smith and the rest of the district staff, to make sure that we're prioritizing and constantly moving things around. Well, AVC Smith and I have been talking about the need to look at some master plans, frankly, for each college campus, right? We've also had some recent new presidents come into play, right? And this new vision post-COVID of what education is going to look like, and to make sure that we're like on the cutting edge of all of that stuff. And we're fortunate that we're at the beginning of Measure G, that we have an opportunity to pivot if we have to make some of those changes in the program, so that at the end of the day, the district gets the most value for their money, and frankly gets facilities that will really support their vision of how they're going to deliver education in the future.
Okay, appreciate
Chair
it.
Dawson, I'd like to add to that a little bit.
Sure.
Also, thank you, Keith, but also sometimes the RFP reflects the efficiency of the organization itself. Just as Keith and AECOM and the district are looking at more creative ways, it's reflected in our RFPs, RFQs. But if an organization is not thinking that way, it's going to be reflective in how they approach their solutions and what they ask for. So if they don't know what to ask for, you're not going to get the solution that's cutting edge.
It's good to hear that the district is cutting edge and is looking for strategic and big thinking solutions. Thank you guys for your answer.
Yeah, comment. So other thoughts or questions? Hearing none, I will ask if there's any public that wishes to comment on the agenda item. Hearing none.
Mark, you're muted. Mark maybe was saying something.
I was. Thank you so Madam Chair, I was just pointing out that there are no members of the public that have entered, but we do have Interim Vice Chancellor Adil Ahmed from Finance and Administration, who's now joined us as well. So welcome, Adil Ahmed.
Oh, thank you. Yes, welcome.
Thank you very much. I came a little bit late. I'm sorry.
That's all right. So hearing no comments or other questions on this item, I want to thank you very much for the good presentation, and I'm looking forward to the next round in the spring, April 2021. And I would like to ask, how often are you updating the Build Peralta website with this information?
Oh, the Build Peralta website is constantly updated, continuously.
Okay.
In fact, I guess a notable thing that's coming up is in the month of February, we're targeting another outreach event to the business community, the local community, to talk about the bond opportunities coming up, and as well as the updates to the bond spending plan.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks
Yep.
again so much. All
Thank
right.
you.
So we are now on to item 6, which is presentation and discussion of the Peralta Citizens Bond Oversight Bylaws. And I believe, John Palmer, you are presenting.
Thank you.
And I think before you start, I'd like to say I hope everyone has reviewed these, and so that you can move through them rather quickly, and then we'll have some questions and comments on them, because I think in particular, at least Mr. Crowley has asked to have a discussion about these bylaws.
I will do my best, and these slides are really intended as a jumping off point for that discussion, and so I'll try and get through them quickly. Okay, so I just want to give a little bit of background on the origins of the Oversight Committee. As many of you probably know, there are sort of two flavors of community college district general obligation bonds, Prop 46 and Prop 39. Prop 46 ones require 2/3 vote, and they don't come with an oversight committee. The state legislature decided that the 2/3 vote was functionally acting as a bar to market for many districts and community college districts, and in 2000 decided that they were going to lower the vote to 55% in hopes of giving market access to more school and community college districts. But along with the lower vote threshold came increased accountability requirements, including the project list, where the district tells voters what they're going to spend money on in advance of voter approval. The annual and financial and performance audits, which make sure money is spent properly and is spent on projects that were approved by voters. And then it also requires the Citizens Oversight Committee. And the Oversight Committee's role is to inform the expenditures of bond funds. So the district told the voters that it was going to spend money on certain types of projects. And the Oversight Committee's job is to tell the public whether the district in fact does so. In order to fulfill that charge, the Oversight Committee is statutorily permitted to engage in certain activities, including reviewing and reporting on the expenditure of bond funds, reporting out to the public about those expenditures, making sure that the district is only spending money on voter approved projects, and making sure that no funds are spent on teacher or administrator salaries. Is anybody familiar with the Attorney General opinion that I've cited here? It's it's from 2004, so it's fairly old, but it created a fairly large loophole in the no funds for administrator salaries prohibition in the Constitution. The question that was asked of the Attorney General was, well, what if we've got project managers internally rather than hiring one externally? If I hired an external project manager, obviously I could use bond funds to pay them. But if I use an employee of the district to do that project management, am I prohibited insofar as they're an administrator from paying any part of their salary with bond funds? And the Attorney General said, no, you're not prohibited from using bond funds to pay an administrator who's doing project management work. And then they sort of made this exception that revolves around a but-for test. And what they said was, if an administrator is doing something that they wouldn't otherwise be doing but for the bond, you can use bond proceeds to pay a portion of their salary. And the theory is that the amount of time that they spend on the bond project work as a percentage of the total amount of time that they spend working should be the same as the percentage of their salary that gets paid from bond funds. And so I think this is an important opinion to know about, because it does permit the district to spend money on administrator salaries. And in my experience with both community college districts and school districts, a percentage of a number of administrator salaries is paid from bond funds because they're doing work that they wouldn't be doing but for the bond project. Any questions about that?
Well, yes, I have a question about that. And when the Attorney General said administrators, does that also apply to the district's legal counsel?
So I think the analysis there is, again, whether legal counsel is performing work that they wouldn't be performing but for the bond. And so to the extent that legal counsel is advising the district on employment issues that are unrelated to the bond, the district shouldn't use bond funds to pay for counsel. But to the extent that counsel is reviewing construction contracts, that's work that wouldn't exist but for the bond and is a proper expenditure of bond funds.
Is that just the customary interpretation, or is that a way that the Attorney General decided or been decided by some court, or what?
Well, the Attorney General
about the legal expenses.
Yeah, the Attorney General has not, to my knowledge, addressed that question directly. But there is a common practice, I would say, that's national capital projects, where you capitalize certain services to the cost of your capital project. So, whether that's a pre-development cost, whether that's a legal cost, whether that's an engineering cost, those are all sort of considered to be part of the cost of the project, and are generally paid for from project funds and are considered a capital cost.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
John, I just want to make a comment and say it in another way. For instance, if a school district, if a project gets sued by an outside entity or a subcontractor, for instance, the district's legal counsel would generally step in and at least have the first review of that and make a determination if they were qualified to take the arbitration of that on. And so that fee would typically come out of the bond contingency. So that portion of the district's legal counsel would be paid for out of the bond program, but it's the contingency pot typically. And then maybe outside counsel would be brought in, and that would also be paid for by the bond to defend the district and the bond program against that claim.
I agree.
So moving on.
John, can I ask a quick question? John, whose choice is it whether to pay an administrator? Let's talk about the case that's a clear-cut case. Somebody didn't work for the district, got hired to manage the bond program, just because the bond passed. That person could certainly be paid by bond proceeds, but the law doesn't require them to be paid by bond proceeds. Who makes the choice?
Yeah, the district makes the choice.
Does the committee make the choice?
No, but it is the committee's purview to understand why the district made that choice and to have an opinion about whether that choice is proper. If they disagree with that choice, they can voice that opinion. In most cases, I think districts consult with legal counsel before they make that decision. And so I'm not sure that the usual oversight committee has legal expertise to weigh in on that, but I think that is a reasonable understanding of their charge.
Okay, thanks.
Can I make another comment about that? Well, we only comment on that after the fact though, because our reporting is always after the actions have already taken place. So we're
right.
dependent on the audit, and it is questions that would come up in the expenditure reports that a legal happened, and hopefully it would come up in the bond program updates, because really true transparency should show over the life of a project where the money was spent, including if there's a claim on a project that is more than, there may be inconsequential cost claims that are settled that are, under $5,000. I don't consider those anything that our committee would get into the nuances of all that, because it's just such a complicated process. But anyway, the point being, we're always doing this after the fact. So yes, we could comment in our annual report that we didn't think that it was prudent on the district's part to take the action that they did. Correct?
That's right. But like I mean, just as a practical matter, I'll say that this was, the subject of a lot of calls that I receive from the districts that I work with is this an appropriate expenditure on an administrator's salary, and how much of the salary can we allocate to the bond? And, we go through a fairly detailed analysis. So, I think in my experience, districts know that this is something that they need to pay attention to. They pay fairly close attention, and they are in conversation with counsel about sort of how to implement this rule that the Attorney General has promulgated in a legal way.
Yeah, thank you. So moving on to the next slide. Perfect.
Okay. So what may the Oversight Committee do to discharge its responsibilities? Primarily, it reviews the financial and performance audits. And the nice thing is that, the auditors are attuned to the legal questions here. And so they're a great first line of defense. And, if the auditors sort of haven't raised a red flag, you can feel pretty comfortable that the district is is proceeding legally. You know, committees can also inspect college sites, review deferred maintenance plans or proposals, review efforts by the district to save money. And then, you know, obviously you conduct meetings. You're required to conduct one meeting a year. Most committees meet more frequently than that, usually quarterly. They produce a report annually, and they have to abide by the conflict of interest provisions in the government code, which basically say you can't peddle your influence or information in service of your own interests. Any questions or discussions about any of the bullets here? Okay, hearing none. So what does the district have to do for the committee? Basically, two things. One is provide some administrative support that includes technical assistance, administrative assistance, and sufficient resources to publicize the committee's findings. And then the district also needs to provide responses to any audit findings, recommendations, and concerns to the committee within 3 months of receiving the audit. As you all know, and I'm not going to read each of these bullets, but there's a statutorily mandated composition of the Oversight Committee. It's worth saying that most of the districts that I work with have a fairly hard time filling each of these seats. Which is not in and of itself a violation of anything, as long as you have the seat dedicated in your bylaws and you're making a good faith effort to fill it, you're doing what you can. You know, the seat that's difficult to fill sort of changes geographically in the Bay Area. Sometimes it's hard to find a member of the bona fide taxpayers organization. And other areas of the state, that's not as big of a lift. And then obviously no employee or official of the district can be on the committee. Yes, sir.
I have a question about that.
Yes,
Oh,
Charlie.
may I speak?
Yes.
Okay. What's the difference between a member active in a bona fide taxpayer association and just a member of a bona fide taxpayers association? For example, let's say if I pay Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association $15 my annual fee, is that a member active in a bona fide taxpayer association?
So I'll say, you know, for the California State Bar, for example, you can be a member of the bar, but you can be inactive. That's a status, and it comes with lower fees. And you're saying you're not practicing law, even though you're a member of the bar. So I think that that's what this was intended to address, is a situation where you could be a member of an organization but not active in it. But I will tell you that this language is straight out of the statute. And this is just the way that the legislature drafted it. But that's sort of how I've tried to make sense of it.
So therefore, would a $15 a year member of Howard Jarvis automatically be a member of a bona fide taxpayer association, an active member of a bona fide taxpayer association, or not?
So what I would say to you is that if you are a member of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association and you have paid your dues for this year, whatever those may be, you're an active member. But if you are a member of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Organization and you haven't paid your dues, or you haven't full dues, you may be an inactive member of the organization and thus ineligible to participate on the committee. But it would depend on what qualifications one needs to be active in that organization.
Yes.
I'll just say that it has never been challenged. So it's never been challenged in court.
So, Mr. Palmer, Has there ever been to your knowledge, a legal question about that?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? Okay,
Okay. So this is my last slide, and this is just sort of some ideas about how to work as a happy committee. And when I joined my first nonprofit board and got my orientation, the chair of the governance committee, who was orientating, I don't know, me, said, you got to remember that everybody here is a volunteer, right? And sort of nobody's here to fight or to have acrimony or heartburn or anger. Like, everybody's here to try and make things better. And that you always kind of got to remember that people are donating their time in service of the organization, because everybody here shares a common and optimistic goal, and that we sort of can't ever lose sight of that. And in the sort of obvious outgrowth of that is that retaining the highest levels of civility and respect, even in the face of disagreement, I think are necessary when everybody there is a volunteer and everybody shares a common desire for a better district and a better bond program. The bylaws have a code of conduct in them, and they're sort of a good place to start if there are ever disagreements about how the what the ground rules are for how the committee interacts. I think of them mostly as a floor rather than a ceiling, right? They're sort of minimum standard. But sometimes things become acrimonious, and they're a good place to go back to, so that you have a place where everybody, a common place where everybody can start. I've seen a lot of both committees and boards trip up over Robert's rules of order. They can sort of be Byzantine. I haven't found the Byzantine provisions to be particularly helpful. And I think as long as you feel like you're having well-ordered conversations where everybody gets to speak and there's sort of an order of speakers and people get to speak for a reasonable amount of time, you're sort of doing what you're supposed to do. So I sort of caution folks not to get too tied up in the minutia. There have been points in my experience as a board member, both when I've had to ask board members to resign and when I've had to resign, because I felt like my vision or the board member's vision was fundamentally incompatible with the vision of the rest of the board. And, it seemed like we had irreconcilable differences. And I think that in that situation, it's the obligation of the individual who has the irreconcilable differences to remove themselves from the process. Absent gross fraud or other, illegal or egregious behavior, so that the committee can function. And I will say both in the situations where I had to ask a board member to resign. And when I myself resigned, you know, the board's functioning returned to normal pretty quickly. And so, you know, I find it incumbent on myself to always ask, like, am I able to work with this group effectively? Am I able to contribute meaningfully? Am I slowing things down terribly because I'm just at loggerheads with everybody else on the board? And to make a decision about whether it's right for me to stay as a result. And then it's also worth saying that the board itself can remove committee members, both for failing to attend meetings or violating the code of conduct. And because I've seen, you know, boards get bogged down in this kind of interpersonal conflict, or where there's one or two members who are fundamentally coming from a different place, you know, I encourage district boards to exercise this judiciously, and to urge, you know, committee members or board members who just can't sort of function within the group to find another way of contributing to the district. And, you know, I never used to talk about any of this, but over the course of my career, I've run into enough dysfunctional boards and committees that I've sort of started talking about it. And because I think that this sort of flows out from the idea that we're trying to serve the greater good, and that's sort of our prime directive.
Yeah, I think you, this is Andrea Dawson. I think those are very good points, and a good perspective for us to all be mindful of when we are participating on this committee, or that fact, any committee. So I'd like to move on to see if we have more questions about the bylaws themselves and what our charge is from any of the members.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, Marcus Crowley.
Yes. When do the members of this committee get to actually see the bylaws?
They should be available upon request.
Okay, so they're okay. I haven't seen that they've been presented to the citizens, to this committee, and I suppose that maybe individual members could track them down, but I would think that they would be more readily available than that.
No, this is Benjamin through the chair.
Yes, Benjamin recognized.
And can those be sent out to the committee? I mean, how do we know what we're supposed to be upholding if we don't have a copy?
Can staff help with this? Are they not posted? I thought at some point when we first convened this committee, we were told, and I'm remiss on if the new members aren't getting the bylaws when they become a member of this committee. Maybe that's something that we should ask for. It's an ask every time a member is appointed, so they understand what they're signing up for.
Chair Dawson, I will look into getting the bylaws to you.
Okay. And I actually think that you could send them to all of us as undisclosed recipients.
Of course.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Were you going to say something, Mark?
Me, Marcus?
No, Mark Johnson.
No, Mark Johnson, who's on mute.
Thank you. Yes, I was going to say that the bylaws are posted in Board Docs, which is the communication tool that the Peralta Board of Trustees uses. So I can send out a link to the most recently updated amendment to the bylaws, which took place in 2020. And if Chair Dawson will recall, the update was made in the spring of 2020 based on feedback coming out of this committee, which is that the terms of service members of the committee should coincide with the fiscal year. So that's when we converted the term of service to July through June.
Yes, I remember that. And as I said, I believe that you gave us the same link at that time of where to see the bylaws, but I think it would be good if we just actually had them sent to us, and that every time a new member comes on the committee that they are actually given a copy of the bylaws, so they don't have to look for them. And I also think it might be a good idea to have them posted under the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee heading and the Build Peralta. So they're in a couple places. That way they're an easy find for folks that are interested in them.
Yeah, I agree with that, with one caveat, which is that if you have things posted in different places in the website, sometimes it's easy to update your bylaws and update one of the places and forget about the other. And then you've got two different versions of the bylaws posted. And so if there's some way of making sure that if one changes, the other changes as well, that's, I think, helpful. But I
get them linked.
There you go. Yeah, I agree that it should be a part of the orientation packet.
May, through the chair?
Yes, Mr. Scott.
This is Benjamin. The other thing is other committees that I've been on, they've sometimes, I'm not saying we have to, but just as a suggestion for newer folks that in the future may come on and are not familiar with Robert's rules, I've seen some abbreviated versions distributed. I know that the city of Oakland gave me one because it also included the Sunshine Ordinance. And there's another one. But anyway, there was a bunch of stuff that we were supposed to know about, not communicating outside of meeting times with more than one other person. The Brown Act.
Brown Act.
So there was the Sunshine Ordinance, the Brown Act, and then there was an abbreviated version of the Robert's Rules in there. So it was a nice packet plus the bylaws. So not trying to make more work, but
well, I think
things run smoother.
I think, yeah, I'm agreeing with you, Benjamin Scott. It would be a good idea. I think maybe we can work on recommendations, what should be in the packet for new committee members. And it doesn't have to be, it would be the links to the website, the bylaws, the Roberts Rule of Order, or the Brown Act, and an introduction to the bond program. But I think most of that would just be through links. The most important thing would be the bylaws of the Citizens Bond Oversight and the Brown Act rules.
Yeah, the actual Robert's Rules book is huge. It's very intimidating. Yeah. And I remember when I became chair of a committee, I was given that, and I just about, I had a sleepless night. Prior, because I thought I was supposed to know everything in that book, but you don't, like the lawyer said. As long as there's a brief abbreviated version, a Reader's Digest version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Chair Dawson,
Etheria, can I recognize, or maybe you're doing the same thing, that Alice gave us the link?
Yes, same thing. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so Patricia Ellis gave us the link to everyone of where the bylaws are posted. So thank you, Patricia. So I'm going to move on to the next item, which is item 7.
I have another question.
Okay.
Okay. I noticed at the beginning of this document here that it says that this committee is independent. I guess that is state law. Is that correct? It's supposed to be independent.
Right. It's independent insofar as no district employees or consultants or vendors are allowed to serve on the committee.
Okay. So, and is it truly independent if the bylaws are imposed on this citizens oversight committee rather than us agree to them or endorse them or anything else like that? Shouldn't there be some process by which the independent committee decides on their own bylaws?
I mean, I'll tell you that the bylaws generally just reflect what's in statute. So there's not a lot of ornamentation added by the district. But as I said, I think that the independence comes from the fact that the district isn't allowed to stack the committee or have anybody who is owes the duty of loyalty to the district serve on the committee. I think that's the meaning of independent, but it is a committee. It's not a board, and as such, I think it exists under the aegis of the district, and it's proper for the district to create the bylaws for the committee.
Is there any legal opinions that share that the independent, the word independent committee means that only that the district people cannot be appointed on the committee? I thought that independent means independent to me. If the bylaws are being imposed, I don't see that as we're independent.
Well, I mean, again, the district doesn't control the operations of the committee, and in fact can't put any district employees or consultants on the committee. But to my knowledge, the issue has not been litigated. There's no authority on point. But I will also say, just in my practical experience, this is the way that every district, both school district and community college district that I've worked with, does it.
Okay.
Can I ask a question, Madam Chair? Oh, sorry.
Yes, Ben Scott.
I just have a question. So it sounds like a rough outline is given from statute. So there's, I mean, it is what it is from California statute. However, if we decide or want or need in the future, what is the latitude in terms of updating or changing the bylaws?
Yeah, as long as it doesn't violate statute, you are in a position to request that the district board revise the bylaws in such manner as you see fit. It's ultimately their decision, but you're certainly entitled to request those changes. Again, unless they contradict statute.
Okay. Well, and I wouldn't say changes. Sometimes there's clarifications, there's updates.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, changes are fine too, right? A lot of bylaws are just how you work together, right? And if you want to meet 5 times a year instead of 4, or 3 times a year instead of 4, and you need to change the bylaws in order to do that, it's okay to change the bylaws. But what you can't do is say, I don't want to have the bona fide taxpayers organization on my on the committee, right? Because that's in statute. You got to do it. You don't get a choice.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So one more question, and then I think other questions we're going to have to put through an email and report on them at our next meeting, and maybe talk about it in when we get to preparing our CBOC annual report. So I'd like to get to that, to get a subcommittee ready for that, okay? So, Ms. Crowley.
I think that we have, this is a interesting topic, and that there's many issues that we could discuss. I would like to see a subcommittee that could hash out these and make up some questions and get some clarification. I think that'd be would be helpful if we had had a subcommittee that could flesh out and develop some of these issues and get them clarified by Mr. Palmer.
Okay, so is there anyone else?
What issues though?
Well, okay, so first I'd like to ask if there's anyone else that's interested in forming a subcommittee on this.
Well, Madam Chair, as point of information.
Yes.
I guess through the chair, through Mr. Crowley, what is, for example, what concerns or issues has the lawyer not addressed today?
Well, for one, Mr. Palmer explained that if the Citizens Oversight Committee wanted to change a bylaw that was in violation of law, that they couldn't do that. And of course, that makes a lot of sense. But how about if the Citizens Oversight Committee wanted to change a bylaw that is in conformity with law, but at odds with the existing bylaws that are drafted by the board? I think that that there might be ground for discussion there.
Well, I think I addressed that, but the procedure there would be for the Oversight Committee to request the board of the district, the governing board of the district, to amend the bylaws. But it's ultimately the governing board of the district's decision whether to so amend them.
Correct. So I think the suggestion of a subcommittee may be a little premature. It's one of those things, Mr. Crowley, if you want to ask some of these questions and they be presented at the next meeting, then if other folks want to work that are on this committee want to join a subcommittee to work on putting together some terms that in the bylaws that we would like to see strengthened or changed that would be presented to the board, that it would be a process. And I'm going to just say that we did that at Oakland Unified School District, and you can go and look at our bylaws, and they're quite different than these bylaws. And so I think it might be a starting point for you to, because we do have some stronger oversight roles. But I would like to move on because I literally in 8 minutes, I have to sign off and we won't have a quorum. And I'd like to address this. So we do have the opportunity to have more discussion on these bylaws. So I think the best way would be for you to put forward those questions. And we can either choose if Mr. Scott or Patricia is interested in being part of a subcommittee. We could form that right now tonight and say the two of you are it to work on it. Or we can ask you, Marcus Crowley, to put forward the questions. And then they come to our next meeting and we decide if we want a committee.
Well, maybe Mr. Scott would like to be on a bylaw subcommittee, and because he seems like he is interested in this particular topic. Would Mr. Scott be interested in doing that?
So I have no problem being part of a subcommittee and rolling my sleeves up. I guess I just wish, I mean, it doesn't seem like there's any specific burning question or issue that we're having. So usually, because I've been on the Oakland Rent Board for 14 years. Typically, if there's a clarification issue, I mean, we bring it up at a meeting and then we hash it out as a board. But we've never looked at the entirety of it all, just for the sake of reviewing it.
Well, that's the way we find out, by having a subcommittee and talking about it. You want to do it?
I'd like to make a suggestion or call for a question that's actually in item 8. And I'm skipping to item 8 over item 7, which technically I'm not supposed to do, I guess. But I think in preparing the CBOC report, if Mr. Scott is interested in participating in that this will automatically be part of that discussion, okay?
So, because making this commitment, I know before making a commitment, I guess, Mr. Crowley, with respect, if maybe there's a few glaring items that you think are worth investigating, then I'm more than happy. But right now, I guess I just don't see what the issue is with the current bylaws.
Okay. So let's have a subcommittee and discuss it.
Well, what I'm hearing, Mr. Crowley, is that Benjamin Scott would rather have you, I believe, put forward the questions, and if it merits a subcommittee, that we would form that subcommittee, which we do not have to have a meeting to form that subcommittee. I can share them with Mr. Scott, and we can form a subcommittee before April 8th. There's nothing that says that we can't do that, okay? So that's where I'd like to leave it. So I'd like you to forward those questions, and we will share them with Mr. Scott if you are interested. And 4 of us can't share, but 3 can, because we're not a quorum. Okay, so we're not talking amongst ourselves. So so that's where I'd like to leave it, and I'd like to move on. And some of those questions will
Would Mr. Scott like to talk with me informally about this?
Well, you can reach out. Okay, it's 6.
Yeah, I have no problem with that, Mr. Crowley.
Okay, all right. Well, so
okay.
I guess I can get the contact information from Andrea. I would think that our
you can do that.
committee members would have telephones and email addresses just as part of the routine.
I will do that.
Device.
I will do that. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Chair Dawson?
Yes.
I'd also like to give the opportunity to Patricia Ellis if she wanted to work on those bylaws too. She seems like she had an interest.
Absolutely. That's why, if anyone, are you interested in forming a subcommittee right now, Ms. Ellis?
It's worth saying, since I recently read the bylaws, that they seem to work pretty well.
Right. You know what? I got 3 minutes. And so I'm going to come back to you all in an email. It is not a violation of the Brown Act as long as you all respond just to me. And then I can make the connections, okay? I'm really sorry that there was a conflict here this evening, but unfortunately, I'm the chair of a special meeting that was an emergency meeting. So I need to be on that in 3 minutes from now. So I'm going to say I asked for an update on the vacant position, which I'm going to speak for you, Etheria Smith, and say that you are working on it, that you recognize that there's a vacancy, that you are working on filling the vacancy, and we hope that it is Kevin Jenkins, who's now a Peralta trustee. And so we appreciated him on this committee, and you'll be filling his position as soon as possible. So with that, I'm going to move on to item 8. Is anyone being part of a subcommittee to write the bond oversight report. Probably, are you interested again? And Mr. Scott, Patricia?
I'm more than happy to if needed.
Okay. Patricia Ellis, are you interested?
Yes.
Okay. So that's 2 of you. I'm happy to do it again. So that's 3 of us. It can only be 3 of us. So I will reach out, and if someone changes their mind, then I will reach out to other committee members to fill that position, okay? And I'm going to say that if there's any other new business items that you want for the next meeting, please forward them to me for the April 8th, 2021 meeting, and I will put them on the agenda. So you can forward them. We have a couple months, so it's not as if you have to forward them right away. If it's on your mind right now, please forward. But if not, forward them 3 weeks prior at least. And if it's an extra report that you want, I would say forward it a month before. So that would be around March 8th of 2021, okay? And with that, I'm gonna say thank you to every one of you, and that I have to sign off. And I'm sorry that we didn't start right on time, or we could have maybe really had 10 more minutes, but we did a pretty good job. And take care and stay safe. And I hope better days are ahead, but when we meet again in April. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Good luck with
much.
the vaccine.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.